Okay, so I hope doing demos helps you guys see what I want from you a little more clearly. I'm having to make lots of changes to this assignment because of the online status of it. I just want you to, I slowly started working on this, just basically finding major, you know, lines, and I always check angles. Like, for instance, I know that, like, oh, what was this? Oh yeah, it's the edge of that little triangle in the background. I know it lines up with roughly with a point, close to the point of this giant triangle that's over here. I'm constantly making cross references. I'll put some cross reference lines on the photo so you can see what I'm doing. Like the bottom of the bowl, or the ball, kind of lines up with the top of this cylinder thing that's cut in half. Like the bottom of this lines up with the bottom of that. So I'm constantly making cross references throughout the entire composition. So you don't want to come in and start just getting stuck in one spot. And this is the typical thing. They get tunnel vision. They look at one spot and look at one spot, and they spend, like, 30 minutes on there, and then they look over here at this spot, and they have like tunnel vision. They're just looking at that, and at this spot and this spot, there's no relationship. They don't actually line up the way they're supposed to. So students always get this, like, pockets of tunnel vision as they're working, and then they never stop and look at the entire thing, and they never get up out of their chair and look at it from far away. So you have to start looking at cross relationships throughout the entire composition. And I'm trying to match the photo. I'm trying to make close enough. It's not 100%, like the way this shape hits the edge here, the way the ball, there's a little bit of gap there. The way this triangle thing goes off the edge, which I haven't really drawn it in there yet. I'm trying to match the same edge relationship to the photo, which is what I want you to do too. And I hope at the beginning, this is another thing I always do. All the pencils I'm about to use, I spend some time sharpening them, getting steep angles on there so I can tilt them on their side and shade. You can use sandpaper, any sandpaper. It doesn't have to be in a neat little block like this. You might have some in your garage or wherever. Keep tools. And then as I'm sanding, I twist it around to get a nice, even kind of texture out there, where it seems kind of even and smooth. You don't want, what I'm worried a lot of you guys do, is you just start working on the drawing, you grab any, crappy tool you have, and you're like, well, we'll see what it does as you start working on it. You have to kind of practice, figure out what it does before you start just doing your drawing. You shouldn't treat your drawing as like take one. This is take one, and that's only going to be one take, and whatever happens, I'm turning it in. I did what you told me to do. It's like, you have to figure out how to do the assignment in the way that I want it to be done, the way I'm asking you. Hopefully the video will help. So after you prepared your pencils, and I have a wide range here, I have Faber-Castell 2B, Staedtler Mars an F, it's the hardest one there. Got a 6B, this is a Tombow, which is a decent brand. It's not my favorite brand. Another Staedtler Mars 7B, and a 4B, this is kind of a cheaper brand, but it's still not that bad. This is the Generals. No Artist Loft pencils, no pencils that are too embarrassed to put the brand name on there so you don't know what it is. It's just mystery pencil. And I'm using, this little Bic thing, so I don't have to worry about sharpening when I want a thin line. So I guess I could start with, the hard one, or I'll just keep going with my mechanical pencil. So I'm just finding big relationships, seeing how things cross-reference, like the side of this ball when it comes down. How much does it line up with the edge of this shape here? And you kind of want the angles to be the same. So like if this angle's pointing at 1 o'clock on your photo, or that you're looking at, it should also be pointing at 1 o'clock. It should completely correspond. And my photo's up here on my laptop, so it's I'm not really showing it to you, but I'm going to put the photo next to this. And then the angle over here, what is that, like 2 o'clock? 230. It should correspond to the photos. You can check the photo, like hold your pencil up to the photo, find the angle, and then just bring it over, make sure that they both match. If you print this out, which I'd recommend, put it right on top, and then you can check the angle, and then just check the angle like that and bring it down. After a while of years of drawing, I'm pretty good at guessing this, but when you're new, you should be checking it constantly and constantly squinting. I deliberately posterized all these photographs that you're going to be drawing from because I wanted you guys to see the values simplified. And I talked about posterizing a thing in class, so now you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Hard to talk and draw at the same time. The posterizing is sort of just a simplified version of all the values. It's almost what I think it looks, the actual still life looks when you squint. So if you look at the actual photo, the non-posterized version, and then you squint at it, all the values will sort of simplify and chunk together in a very kind of less high-res version. That's sort of what the posterizing does. And that's kind of what you should be, how you should be drawing early on. You should just be looking at a simplified version of all the values so you don't get lost in all the detail. Like another thing that happens when you posterize it is that all the surface texture kind of disappears. So like if you look at the photograph version, you'll see all these specks and dots and stuff. You don't want to be thinking about that. You want to be thinking about just the major chunks of value. And you don't want to, like, for instance, like on the ball, you'll see several lines that are sort of define the edges of all those shapes. You don't want to come in here and just put more lines in here. Like, for instance, you don't want to do this. I'm going to do it and then I'm going to erase it because this is what I don't want you to do. For instance, on the ball, you'll see a line for that dark shadow, and then you'll see another line for the next shadow, and then another line for the next shadow. I don't want you doing that. I'm not trying to give you more things to outline. I'm just trying to show you where the a simplified version of all the values. So for instance, what I think is interesting is the way that this, when I squint, a lot of times you can see the values and the edges disappearing. So like the background and the edge of the ball, the shadow that's inside the ball, kind of merge together. So I'm going to, since it merges like that, I'm going to actually merge it. And then this value, I'm trying not to leave gaps. And I'm not trying to hit the exact value because this is way, way lighter than what I see there. This is probably 5 steps lighter than what I see there, but that's okay. You should slowly build and then change angles. So, oh, by the way, this is a 2B. So I went in this angle, and I'm going to, just to sort of fill it in more evenly, I'm going to change to a slightly different angle. And maybe try to push a little harder. Hopefully I'm not shaking the camera. And I don't want to confuse you too much, but I constantly do this too. I change the angle of the paper. There's no merging of, you know, this and this, so I'm gonna try not to overlap the ball over here. And I'm still not exactly at the right value, but that's okay. And this is crappy printer paper. I don't want you working on crappy printer paper. Work on your sketchbook, which your sketchbook should have slightly nicer paper than this. It'll have more grain and tooth to it. And I'm going to just spill over a little bit on the ball there. That line can go away because that was just a sight measurement line. It all kind of goes over there. I'm going to skip going over there for now because I don't want to smudge it right now. darken this a little bit. It's basically a core shadow. Let me look at the original photo. Let me see. Is it in a core shadow? Very, very soft core shadow. So I shouldn't go too dark. If anything, it's actually less angled. It comes back here a little more. This is also a good way to create an edge. If you erase, it also creates a nice sharp edge. And I don't really know where the edge of that pointed shape is, so I'm going to just shade past it. Push a little harder. You know, maybe I'm thinking I need to switch to a softer pencil for it to get the level of darkness that I want. So this is another tricky shape here. This whole triangle's light gray. And here's something you should do. I'm looking at the photo, not the posterized right now, is make cross references. So you should ask yourself, like, this value that's in this triangle, and squint at your drawing, is it the same value as, it's like the same value as that one of the transition values in the ball here. And is it the same value as that triangle that's back here? I haven't quite drawn it in there, but in between, there's like these two triangles. Boop, boop. And actually more than two. Actually several. Is it the same value as that? I feel like this and this are the same value. And it's probably one of the transition values is the same value also. So you should be constantly, just like how you're cross-referencing with lines through the whole thing, you should be cross-referencing your values too. So let me start shading this triangle. Before I do that, I'm gonna erase some of my searching lines. And I haven't quite figured out all the shapes here, which I probably should. I'm kind of speeding through this. This one's darker. And then look at just all the different planes here. So there's, this one's medium, this one's lighter than that one, this one's the lightest, and there's even like a slight transition. It gets kind of darker. You can see it more clearly in the posterized. There's a cast shadow over here. There's actually another shape in there somewhere. Cast shadow comes out. Maybe I should switch to something harder. F is really hard, but I'll give it a go with F. And maybe, since I don't really know how good this tip is, maybe I should test it on a scrap piece of paper so I don't ruin it. The sharpening on this could probably be a little better. The wood is getting in the way. A little better. It's super, super pale, so I'm gonna try not to push too hard. Changing angles. Trying to fill in all the gaps. I don't want to leave a lot of gaps. That's what my changing angles helps fill in the gaps. And I just shade past the line. I don't try to come up to that line and stop. Hopefully I'm not shaking the hell out of this camera. does get a little darker at the bottom, so maybe I'll push this a tad darker. And I'm looking when I'm looking at both the posterized version and the regular photo version, and I think I'm close. I'm not 100% right. That might be too light still. But here's the thing, you don't really know until you start filling in all the values. Like the minute I start darkening this, it's going to change my opinion of how dark this is, because everything sort of is relational. So it's right now this looks really dark because it's surrounded by 1, 2, 3, or everything around here is really light. But the minute I push this darker, it's going to change my opinion about this. Actually, this one's lighter. These two are dark. But as soon as I darken these and then darken the background, it's going to shift my opinion about everything. And there's all this shadow back in here. So let me darken those two shapes in the back here. Let's see. I got to figure out how it touches the edge here. You can use a ruler too. If you feel not so confident in your abilities to draw straight lines. In lieu of a ruler, I'm going to use this. And I know there's two different shapes in there, but I'm gonna they're so close together in value. I'm just gonna shade it as if it's one. Oops, that's another thing. Gotta be careful what's underneath. Should probably tidy up this edge too before I do it. As I measure it, I can see it slightly tilts down. So I'm being a little sloppy with this edge because I could easily erase it. I don't want to be sloppy with this edge because I don't want to have to erase that shading that I put over there. It's kind of hard to see because there's so much shine from the light. Now maybe I should switch to a softer pencil. So let me pull out the 6B. Again, just so I'm not surprised what it does. I'll test it. Doing it again. You can even go in circles. Some students like to do this like little swirly thing. Figure out if that's just a straight line or if it's two angles. I think it's two angles. I think it's actually something like this. Hard to tell. I think there's like a tip there. Anyway, I don't want to do it too hard. What is this, 2B? So this value is sort of in between. And again, I don't think this value is perfect. I think it needs to go darker, but I don't want to go too dark right now. Right at the 20-minute mark. I'm going to feel free to spill past that line. This edge is not looking so good. You could, but I don't think you should do it at this early stage. Use a brush. This is just like a generic acrylic paint brush to kind of smooth it out a little bit. I don't know if I talked about this in this class, but in general, you want to avoid smudging with your finger unless you're using charcoal, because all the oils in your skin, even if your hands are freshly washed, will leave like little grease spots. And technically, some people don't like to smudge at all with graphite because they feel like it's technically not meant to be smudged, which is technically true. But I allow it. I say keep it to a minimum though with graphite. I'm gonna just keep going a little longer here. I was gonna stop at the 20-minute mark, but I don't feel like I've done that much. Again, I don't want you to get obsessed with lines, so all these lines I'm going to do, I'm not going to try to push them too hard. Because I want the lines, the edges to eventually dissolve where they dissolve. So the ball does a peculiar thing. It doesn't look like it's a full ball. It feels like at the bottom here it actually has a flat spot. So there's a really dark like contact shadow here. So that contact shadows are the only like hard outline that I think I'm okay with. And my whole ball's been lost. I have to find it again. So this shape is really tricky. All kinds of peculiar little triangles in there. And here's the ellipse for this thing. And again, one of the first things I always do when I draw an ellipse, not always, but usually, is I find the major axes. And then you can just erase the axis point. Try to darken this a little bit. I think I want to stop there. I'm going to continue working on this and then do another update.